language processing to predict credit default swap returns. This time I'm looking more at equity returns, but I'm looking at 10Ks instead of earnings calls, and I'm looking specifically at certain subjects within 10Ks. So instead of looking at the overall sentiment of a 10K, I'm looking at certain subjects, which I will show in the next slide. So I'm trying to understand how the sentiment expressed around three different topics correlates with stock returns within the S&P 500. And then I want to understand how, in general, like most research has done, how the overall text is correlated with the returns. So, like most of these projects, the purpose is to generate alpha for investors. I mean, we want to find some kind of correlation. If we can find some kind of subject, call it like M&A. If we can find that there's a lot of positive sentiment around that specific subject, then it might be a good trade signal for PMs. So that's really the purpose of the project. And again, it's different than prior research because it not only includes how the sentiment is throughout the entire 10K, but it also includes certain subjects. So the data collection was very different. We had to go in through the SEC website, and we had to parse through each of these HTML links to get the CIK and the accession number. From there, we were able to get the date of the filing. And you can see the bottom three data frames that I was sort of working with here. First, I had to go in, extract the CIK, and then this accession number, which would give me the date. And once I had the date, I was able to connect to the CCM database on the right here, which has every single ticker and their return, every single ticker in the S&P 500 and their return on a specific day. So this is thousands of rows long, and I would then merge these data frames together. And here's a sort of what this looked like. So as you can see, I go in through the HTML. I go into the HTML, I grab an accession number, and then I use this to extract the filing date with this format. And the below code just shows that it worked. And then similar, we use this I actually use two different dictionaries. I use this Lawford McDonald dictionary that I used before for the CDSs. And then there's another ML machine learning dictionary that I included. And this is the code. So I'm essentially looking at the proximity around these subjects: competition, innovation, regulation. And these are just three lists, but these can be as long as you desire, that are words that are similar to competition, innovation, or regulation. So I'm going in, I'm looking at these words, and I'm looking at a certain distance around these words and figuring out and counting the positive words based off both these two sentiment lexicons. So this uses the rate feature or package in Python. And you can see the below data frame, sort of what this looks like. We have LM positive, we have the ML negative. These are the Lawford McDonald positive and negative for that specific CIK and filing date. And then we have at the right M&A. These are all just name changed to make it look a little more readable, I guess. So we have M&A, growth, and legal troubles. So you can see the count of positive and negative words around those subjects as well. So here are the results. And like we kind of expected, everything's pretty random. So we ran it for 1 day after the 10K, 2 days after the 10K release, and 3 days after the 10K release. And you can see there's only the one circle on the bottom right that has, that's the one with the highest correlation. That has a negative 0.15 correlation, which is interesting because if we look at what it is, it's the growth topic, and it's the number of positive hits it has. And we look at that, it has a negative correlation with the 1 day return. So to me, that means that maybe, I mean, it's still pretty random because it's low, but potentially the more they talk about growth and investing, that means that there's more capital expenditures, and that would, lower their free cash flow. And that's maybe why that could have a decrease in the stock price. which is interesting. You know, I don't really think, I think it's still pretty random, but that would be, I think, one reason why it could be the strongest negative correlation. And then I go into why it's random. And then first of all, the sentiment lexicon, as kind of with the last project, it's kind of it might not be accurate for some of these financial documents. Also, the textual complexity. There's a lot of new jargon and complex language in these 10Ks, and it might be ambiguous, and it may, challenge the sentiment in the algorithms. So I think most importantly, the data quality. So first of all, we kind of assume that every date and the day after is when um it would have the most impact the next few days. But if an earnings came out before the market opened, then you would think that that day it came out would have the most impact. But we never really checked to see if it came out before or after the market closed. So that makes a pretty big difference on how the stock would have reacted, because yeah. And then on the right, you can sort of see on the top, we have the correlation matrix between the return for 1 day, 2 day, and 3 day with the different all the different variables. And what's next? So comparing to the CDS results, I noticed the CDS, although it had a lot less data, had a much stronger correlation. It was twice as the highest one we had before for the growth topic. And I'm trying to figure out why this might be, and I think it's either because the CDS spreads are more sensitive to language in 10Ks, or because language intervals have more predictive power. Just simply because, again, we're using 10Ks now, which seem to have very little predictive power, versus with the CDS, we use these earnings calls, which still not much data and not much to confirm it, but it does look like it has a little more predictive power. And we also, should add more subject topics to this list, and way more possible words that can go along with it. Like I had before, I only had 3 in those lists, but you can add a bunch of words that have some relation to growth or innovation. And then I kind of mentioned this, but I think if I were to continue doing this, I would go in and use Benzinga or some news site to figure out whether the earnings call or the 10K came out before or after the market closed. So then we can actually get a more accurate return date. And that's it.